Our story starts in the Demon Castle, where our protagonist reflects that in every era, justice always prevails over evil. A knight asks him if he is the Demon King, to which he replies affirmatively, feeling the weight of his destiny. He proudly responds that he is the great being who rules over all demons, the 100th Demon King, Laruslia Nord. Laruslia then wonders when it all began. Long ago, humans considered demons to be evil. Many of his brethren were killed in the name of justice, and in retaliation, they fought back against the humans. In the end, both sides pointed their swords at each other, leaving no chance for negotiation. Everything was done for no reason. Laruslia knew that the winner of this foolish game would rule the world. However, humans always trembled before great power, and he recalled that the future he foresaw was one where the world's strongest heroes would kill the Demon King. But he thought there was no need to worry, as both sides were already at each other's throats, leaving no room for negotiation. Compared to the Demon King, who holds absolute power, the heroes gain their strength by overcoming trials from gods and spirits. With trump cards in the hands of both sides, the battle is quite fierce. In the end, justice shall prevail, a truth passed down from generation to generation, which is why Laruslia was eventually defeated by the heroes. As the sword pierced his chest, he understood that the heroes' party was perfectly prepared, consisting of a swordmaster, a saintess, and an archmage. Regardless, the heroes are justice, while the Demon King is evil. This made him guess that defeating him might be the right thing to do, and he smiled. The knight asks him why he is laughing and if he is up to something. Laruslia just looks at the knight and responds that the daughter of his friend is having her birthday tomorrow. He then remembers telling the kid named Iris that he would visit, and Iris happily greeted him. He then tells the knight that the end of demonkind is near, tears falling from his eyes as he says it is regrettable knowing that demons will be hunted down once their king is dead. In that case, little Iris will also perish. The knight stares at him in silence for a moment and then tells him it seems he was not lying. Laruslia replies, "Of course not," and tells the knight that in the end, he will reveal the truth. The only thing both sides have done until now is kill each other. The church may call them servants of evil in their teachings, but humans and demons are fundamentally the same. If she doesn't believe him, she should see it with her own eyes from now on, and she will start to question the church's teachings about killing demons. He slowly begins to disappear, telling the knight that if she feels something about demonkind, she should correct it by seeking a future between demons and mankind. The knight continues to stare at him in silence, then reaches for him, replying that she understands. She places her hand on his shoulder, promising that she will believe his words and not discriminate against demons. This makes Laruslia thank her, realizing the knight is a woman, and it becomes a farewell story to hell. The last scene he sees before his death is an angry saintess, making him wonder why she is looking at him with such a hateful expression. But he thinks that, for someone about to disappear, he doesn't need to know the reason behind it. He is confident that, with the knight, the future will be alright. The Demon King, who lost to the hero, disappears from the world, and the story seems to end with a happy ending. But that is not the case. Someone calls him Laru continuously, making him slightly open his eyes. When his eyes are fully open, he sees a smiling lady who tells him, "Finally, you opened your eyes," and greets him with a good morning. He noticed that it was a human lady, and as she approached him, he worriedly wondered what she was planning to do. She then grabbed him gently, telling him that he was a good boy. When he tried to stop her, he saw his little hand. She told him that he must be hungry, held him, and reassured him that his mother would prepare the meal soon. This made him realize that the woman holding him was his mother, and he felt a warm, comforting feeling. Even though he knew he needed to think, he was losing consciousness. In the circle of birth and death, creatures transcend the boundaries of species and are reborn into different life forms. It's a myth that has been passed down in their demon tribe. But Laruslia, who had become Laru, never thought he'd experience it himself. He could clearly remember the days spent with his comrades and his defeat by the heroes. He wondered why he had reincarnated with his memories as the Demon King and if there was any meaning to it. No matter how much he thought about it, in his current body, all he could do was eat and sleep. He remembered that back then, he was busy with official duties and battles, but after becoming a baby, he was incredibly free. He looked at the maid nearby, knowing he needed to gather information quickly. He wanted to ask the maid how many years had passed since the hero defeated the Demon King, but he realized he couldn't talk and wished he could move on his own soon. The maid then remembered she needed to prepare hot water and grabbed her wand. She began to summon the red burn to light a small fire. He saw it and wondered if it was supposed to be a spell and why they were using such messed up grammar when basic magic shouldn't need chants or tools. He realized that since becoming a baby, he hadn't used magic yet, making him wonder how much magical power he had. He then clenched his cute little fist, knowing that humans have less magical power than demons and he couldn't expect much. But he was surprised to feel the overwhelming amount of magic power inside him, making him wonder if not only his memories but also his magical power had carried over. He felt that the feeling wasn't different from when he was the Demon King, but he couldn't channel magic into his body as smoothly as before. This made him wonder if it was because he was human now or because his body was still underdeveloped. He knew that with some special training, it would work out somehow. He then noticed that no one was around anymore and realized the importance of his power, knowing that without it, he would be destroyed just like in his previous life. 7 years later, Leroux was in the library, freely releasing his power to grab books without standing on his chair. After reading them, he snapped his fingers, and all the books he read returned to their shelves on their own. He was a bit worried but glad that he had managed to use magic to a certain extent. He guessed he might be able to use large-scale magic, but he knew it was so powerful that it could blow away a village, so he couldn't test it. Besides, he really didn't want to do something like that. He stood up and began to walk, thinking that besides magic power, he had understood a few other things. Since the day he was defeated by the hero, he had figured out that several thousand years had already passed, which explained why everything was different. Suddenly, someone called him, and his mother found him, saying he was there after all. His mother noticed something and asked if he was reading about the ancient demons myths again. He replied yes and explained that they were interesting. Ancient demons, once at war with humans, were now considered dubious myths. His mother patted his head sweetly, asking if he really liked to read or if it was just the age of being drawn to fantasy. He just softly smiled, knowing that no one believed in the existence of ancient demons anymore. However, he thought there might still be survivors of the ancient demons around because demons have a far longer lifespan and life force than humans. He was sure he could find them if he searched the globe, but for now, as a 7-year-old kid, he couldn't even leave the village, so he decided to read books for a while. His mother then remembered something and told him that his father, Patrick, would be returning home soon. In his letter, Patrick had said it would be about 2 weeks, and she hoped he would bring back more books. Patrick Caddy's Nora was a sword instructor for the Kingdom of Leonard's Knights and the Lord of Caddy's village. Leroux thought he would get to see his father after so long and wondered if he could get swordsmanship training from him again. But then his mother remembered something else and told him she got distracted and almost forgot why she came to call him. She asked if she was right in thinking he had plans to play with Rusty and the others. Leroux asked if it was that time already. His mother pushed him gently, telling him to hurry up and get ready because he was going to be late, to which he replied, "Okay." A moment later, he arrived at their meeting place, knowing he was a bit late. Then someone called him and waved. It was Rusty with 2 girls, who told him he was late. Rusty tells Leroux that he has finally arrived and asks if they didn't agree to meet there today. Leroux apologizes and explains that he was late because he was reading a book. Rusty asks if reading is really that fun and insists that if they're boys, it should be all about adventure. Rusty then proudly declares that he is going to be an adventurer someday. Leroux just looks at him in silence. Mai then chimes in, saying that Rusty is always going on about adventure but hasn't even passed Patrick's swordsmanship test yet. Teasingly, she asks Rusty when he thinks they'll be able to leave the village, which makes Rusty pissed. He tells Mai that she's being too harsh. Yuri agrees with Rusty, saying that dreaming about something is important. Leroux reflects that these 3 kids have been his childhood friends since his reincarnation. He knows that the 2 girls have feelings for Rusty, which is why they don't want him to leave the village. However, he's also aware that whether Rusty realizes this is another matter. Leroux interrupts their conversation by asking Rusty if he hadn't promised something because there was an event today, hinting that Rusty seemed to be looking forward to it. Rusty excitedly responds that Leroux is right, and today is the day they were supposed to see the adventurers. Rusty shouts that they're real adventurers. Yuri points out that sometimes adventurers come by, but usually they're just merchants' guards. Rusty insists that this time is different because a top-class adventurer, who blazes trails into uncharted lands and becomes a legend, is coming. He urges them all to go to the village entrance to see them. They are hesitant but know that once Rusty gets an idea, there's no stopping him. A moment later, they arrive at the village entrance and see people gathering there. However, they are disappointed when they see no adventurers. Leroux tells Rusty that it seems they haven't arrived yet, making Rusty disappointed. But then Rusty excitedly wonders if the adventurer will arrive soon and runs to the front, shouting that he's going to check. The 2 girls chase after Rusty while Leroux smiles, watching them. He reflects that adventuring is a profession that involves exploring lands and slaying monsters. He also knows that while it wasn't needed in the past, even the lands that were once managed seem to be untouched now for some reason. This makes him wonder if it's just the passage of time. Suddenly, Leroux heard a panicked scream and saw a huge monster running toward the village, heading straight for Rusty, who was in the front. Realizing it was a monster of the forest, LaRue prepared to release his power, but then he felt a strong magical presence. An elf used her wind whirlwind magic to stop the monster from moving. A man appeared on top of the monster and easily cut off its head with his sword, leaving LaRue stunned in amazement. The monster disappeared, and the adventurer called out to Rusty, asking if he was hurt. Rusty, who was on the ground in fear, stood up quickly and shouted in excitement about how amazing it was. Mai reminded Rusty to say thank you, and Rusty stutteringly thanked the adventurer. The lady welcomed him and expressed relief that everyone was safe. LaRue noticed the lady, but before he could ask anything, Rusty asked the lady if she was a spirit, complimenting her magic and pointing out her pointed ears. The lady replied that he was close, but she was actually an elf, a race created after the spirits, and introduced herself as Yumi's. The adventurer man then introduced himself as Gran, explaining that he adventures together with Yumi's. LaRue had never felt such a strong amount of magic power in their village, making him think that both Yumi's and Gran seemed quite capable. Yumi's then told them that many village kids dream of becoming adventurers and asked Rusty if they all wanted to become adventurers in the future. Rusty stutteringly replied yes and excitedly shouted that he wanted to be a real adventurer someday, making the adventurers laugh. Gran then patted Rusty on the head, telling him that while he wouldn't say it was impossible, if Rusty was serious about pursuing it, he'd better train hard because, without proper skills, becoming an adventurer would just get him killed. Rusty excitedly replied yes, making Gran laugh and tell him that it was a good answer, and that he had potential. Gran also tells Rusty that he'll share some adventure stories, but first asks if Rusty could show him to the inn. Rusty eagerly agrees. Mai, observing this, tells Yuri she doesn't want Gran to get Rusty too fired up. Yuri, smiling, asks if boys ever change, no matter how old they get. Yumi's, overhearing the girls, asks LaRue if it's complicated between them, to which he replies that it's a typical love triangle. Yumi's then asks about him, suggesting he might be part of a love square. LaRue responds that he is just an observer. She whispers to him that he's quite unusual and asks if those two girls are cuter than usual, suggesting he should stake his claim now. Knowing this wasn't advice she should give to a child, LaRue responds that it's more enjoyable just watching. Yumi's, taken aback by his answer, remarks that he has poor taste. He tells her that's harsh and suggests she must be tired, offering to guide her to the inn too. She agrees, saying that would be nice. As they walk, she tells him they were attacked by a monster on the way there as well. Later, at the inn, alcohol is served to the adults while the kids drink juice next to their parents. Gran begins telling the kids about their adventures, mentioning they stopped by the nearby ruins. Yumi slams her beer on the table and interjects that Gran was much worse, recalling how he insisted on joining a fighting tournament last time. LaRue looks at her, bemused, wondering if she really said she was tired earlier. LaRue's mother comments that it's great the adventurers are so kind, to which he responds that Rusty and the others are totally attached to them. One of the men asks Yumi's if they came to see the ruins on the outskirts of the village. She replies that no one knows when or for what purpose the ruins were built, but she thinks it might have been constructed by the ancient demons. This revelation surprises LaRue. Gran responded that it wouldn't be that easy to find definitive proof, and even if they did find something, there would be no way to be sure it belonged to the ancient demons. Yumi's angrily asked if it wasn't romantic to think so. LaRue guessed that maybe Gran was right, knowing that ruins can be found everywhere, and although he can identify ancient demon ruins at a glance, he can't prove their authenticity since the existence of ancient demons is considered a myth. Mai then asked Gran if they always investigated ruins. Gran replied no, explaining that most of the time, he defeats monsters, so investigating ruins and participating in tournaments are just his hobbies. Gran added that they were there this time because Yumi's wanted to go, but he also likes taking part in tournaments whenever he gets the chance, making LaRue wonder if they were not there because of a specific request. He thought they were true adventurers, exploring what they liked without being bound by anything, and smiled, thinking that they must be having a lot of fun on their journey. Rusty then told Gran that he really wanted to become an adventurer and, although he needed help earlier, he swore to work harder to hone his sword skills. He begged Gran to take him on as his apprentice. Gran replied no, making Rusty cry and ask what he meant by no. Gran, panicking, explained that being an adventurer isn't all about cool jobs, especially in the beginning, because there are a lot of chores, and he doesn't have the means to look after him until he becomes an adventurer. Rusty then asked Gran if he would take him as his apprentice once he became an adventurer. Gran laughed hard and responded that if Rusty insisted, he guessed he had no choice and would be his master when that time comes, but warned Rusty that he couldn't teach him much. Rusty was just happy that Gran agreed and thanked him. LaRue, silently watching, noticed that Rusty was surprisingly good at negotiating. His mother commented that she wasn't sure if becoming an adventurer was a good idea, even though Rusty was happy. Laru reassured his mother, saying he was sure Rusty would be fine because his father said Rusty had good potential. Mai tells Yuri that Rusty is sure to become an apprentice, which makes Rusty even more motivated. Yuri responds that she knows it's a good thing for Rusty, but she feels a bit sad. Suddenly, Yumi's appears behind them, making the two girls scream in surprise. She apologizes for scaring them and says she wants in on the girls' talk. She asks if they are having love troubles. Yuri immediately disagrees, and Mai explains that Rusty can be a bit clumsy, so they are just worried about him. Yumi says she understands, though she doesn't specify with whom. She tells them that, in her opinion, Rusty will be able to make his dream come true, and when that time comes, she wonders if they will really be able to just stay in the village and see him off. Before they can answer, someone claps to get their attention and shouts that it's late, so the kids should go home. The kids protest, but they have no choice. Laru's mother tells him they should head home, which he agrees to, smiling at Gran and Yumi's, thinking they are interesting and wishing he could have heard more. As they head home, his mother asks him when the last time it was that lively. He notices the loneliness that follows a party, realizing that no matter how many years go by, that feeling never changes. His mother then calls him, about to ask if he would leave one day too, but stops herself and squeezes his hand a little, telling him it was nothing. He replies okay, but he knows that his mother understands that someday, when he grows up, he'll leave the village. The next day, in the forest, Laru is holding a training sword and swings it. Position his foot and swings back his sword and finishes it with a strong slash. He stops and wipes his sweat, deciding that it's all for today. He knows that although his father, Patrick, is an elite knight, if he accidentally reveals his demon lord powers, they'd notice it. As he walks home, thinking he'd like to improve a bit more before the next practice, he hears someone shouting. He sees people looking around, making him wonder what's going on. Someone then calls to him, worriedly asking where he was and if he was alone. He replies that he is alone and asks what's going on. The lady then responds with concern that Rusty and the others are missing. He shouts to the lady, asking if she really said that Rusty and the others are missing. But the lady just asks him if he has seen them and tells him that she hasn't found them since that morning. The lady then reminds him that those kids didn't want to leave yesterday, so she thought they might have gone outside without permission. This makes him think it might be the case. If he remembers correctly from yesterday's conversation, Yumi said that she would go to a ruin close to the village, but he has never been there before. He thinks it should be in the opposite direction from their village. He then tells the lady that he understands and he will also look for them. The lady thanks him and warns him not to go to any dangerous place, to which he replies that he will do his best. However, he thinks the safety of those three kids is a priority because, after all, they were the first friends he made as a human. He then arrives at the entrance of the village where he sees someone and is surprised that it is Yumi's. She shouts to him to stay back because she will put a barrier around the village. She then calls the innocent spirits who reside in that forest to lend her their power in exchange for her mana and create a wall that divides the village from the forest. He shouts to her to wait and tells her that Rusty and the others are currently missing, making her ask him in panic what he just said. He tells her that they are probably not in the village and everyone is saying that they might have gone into the ruin. If he can't do it alone, he will ask the adults for help. Yet, she just apologizes to him and explains that she can't stop the cast. The mystic wall arcanum then appears at the entrance. He shouts, asking her why she did it, and she begs him to understand that she needs to protect the people inside the village. Suddenly, they hear a gun shooting at the barrier and he sees that it is coming from a magic machina. She explains to him that those things came out from the ruin and several of them have been flying into the village, which is why she rushed there. He knows that it is bad because their feet are basically magical cannons and it is a magic weapon made by demons to kill humans. He was thankful for Yumi's barrier because their village was safe, but he wondered what would happen if those things flew into the nearby villages or cities. She asks her if she doesn't find it strange, because that the ruin itself was not that strange. As they are about to go back to the village, the wall suddenly collapses, and Gran should still be fighting the big magic machina. He realizes that it was a trap set in the ruin and knows that if this is the case, there should be a device that controls those machines. He then tells her that he has to go somewhere else right now, making her confused. She apologizes to him because she won't cancel the barrier no matter what and tells him that there is nothing he can do as a kid. He puts his hand on the barrier while Yumi's tells him that only the caster can designate whether someone is allowed to pass through or not, which is why he should go back home. However, he breaks the barrier using his power, his hand piercing through it easily. Yumi's is shocked and asks what is happening when she hasn't allowed him. He apologizes to her and tells her that he is going to rewrite the magic equation, and with it, the barrier is also his. She asks him what he means by rewriting the magic equation and insists there is no way to do it, but he just passes through the barrier, leaving Yumi's trapped inside. He then tells her that he was a bit worried about the power output of the barrier, so he enhanced it a little. Since he made it from her mana, he also tells her that she should not be able to go outside. He made the same rule about who could pass the barrier, so in case Rusty and the others come back, she should take care of them. He then turns around while telling her that he is counting on her and that he is going to find Rusty and the others. He runs away while Yumi shouts for him to wait a minute. When he is gone, she is stunned, wondering what the hell just happened and if it was really a kid. Meanwhile, in the ruin, Gran is protecting the kids and notices that even though the enemies are active, they don't attack. He shouts to the scared kids that it is possible they only react to moving targets, so they shouldn't move until he gives the signal. However, Gran knows that at this rate, he won't be able to do anything. He then hears someone approaching and calls out to Gran from behind, making Gran shocked to see him. Gran asks him why he is there and what happened with Yumi's. He replies that Yumi's is currently casting a barrier around the village. Gran curses in panic and points to the kids, telling him that since he is already there, he has no choice but to hide with the kids as well. He is glad that everyone looks fine and sees that Gran's opponent is Rups Gigantes, a titan originally built for civil work but sometimes used as combatants in emergencies. He knows that currently, the only person who can stop these titans is him, and he can't back down because the cannon abyss that was flying into the village has very high accuracy for its attacks, which means these titans probably have the same purpose. He walks forward, wondering if they are going to attack from that range, making Gran shout for him to stop and not get close to the titans. Despite this, he keeps walking forward, making Gran beg him to listen. Rusty worriedly calls out and begs him to stop, but he just responds that he is fine and tells Gran that he is counting on him. He walks a little closer to the titans, which respond, so he walks backward and they stay in their position. He tells Gran that the position he is standing in is the limit and as long as they are not close to the ruin, the titans won't attack them. Gran tells him that it looks like they are protecting the ruin and asks why. He agrees and also wonders why they have been set like this. He doesn't have any memory of the building of that ruin, making him guess that it was probably built after his death. He then tells Gran that he is going inside to check something, but Gran shouts that he won't allow it and he won't let him risk his life. Gran also tells him that the incident is their fault in the first place, so he should just stay silent and come back because he is still only a kid and doesn't have the strength to fight. He asks Gran if he is saying that it should be fine as long as he is strong enough. He also asks Gran if someone truly capable can enter the ruins. Gran replies that, to put it simply, yes. He then rushes toward the titans, telling Gran to watch him. Gran is confused but too late to stop him as he runs closer to the titans. The titan activates when he steps closer to the ruin, raising its weapon to attack, but he just jumps off the ground, high into the air. He then smiles at the titan and punches it in the body, shattering it into pieces, which shocks Gran and his childhood friends. The remaining titans then charge at him, but he just turns around with his hand in front and, with one hand, stops the huge spear the titans that attack him. He then grabs the spear from the titan and attacks them with it, shattering them into pieces and defeating them easily. Gran is shocked and asks what is with him, but he just asks Gran back if his skills are up to the task. Gran replies that with that much, he can't really say anything, but he should let him set some conditions. He asks what the conditions are, and Gran replies that he'd prefer if he or Yumi's also entered because the ruin is a significant discovery, and it'll be troublesome later if only a kid is entering. Gran then tells him that he'll return after dropping the kids back at the village and that if he manages to stop the machinery, he shouldn't delve any deeper and either return to the village at once or wait until he comes back. He replies that it is fine. He then tells his childhood friends to take care on their way back, to which Rusty responds okay and tells him that he gets that they can't keep up with him after all. Mai then admits to him that they have caused some trouble too, and Yuri apologizes and tells him to be careful as well. He then waves them goodbye and looks at the ruins entrance, wondering if he should go in now. When he is inside, he walks straight to the monitor and stops the magical machinery. He then sees that there is no other information and reads that there are no long-range attack machines. He realizes that the machines outside are focused solely on defense, making him wonder if the ruin is built to preserve something. He then sees on the screen that there is a large room at the innermost part and he'd like to check it out immediately, but he remembers Gran telling him to wait until he was back and decides to do so because he promised. A moment later, he was in the corridor waiting, telling himself not to recall it, but he still remembered the time spent in a similar building with a lot of his friends and thought that it was lively. Then someone called him. It was Gran, who apologized for being late and asked if he was alright because he looked sad. He smiled softly and replied that he was fine. He then explained that it was just a bit chilly inside the ruins, which Gran agreed with, noting that they were underground after all. He asks Gran if he is right that the magical machinery has stopped, and Gran replies that everything's shut down perfectly. Gran then asks him how he stopped it, and he replies that he just touched things randomly and it stopped. Gran then asks if he was right that he messed with Yumi's barrier too, mentioning that she was really mad. He remembers it and tells Gran that it'll be fine if he just rewrites the spell again. but Gran asks him if he has any idea how difficult it is to rewrite a spell, explaining that even a decent magician would take several minutes. Also, Yumi's is a top-class magician. He didn't expect it, thinking it would be quick with Yumi's skills, and wonders if the technique of rewriting is not passed down these days. He then tells Gran that he'll lift the barrier once they get back to the village. More importantly, it seems like there is a room further in, so they should head there and see it. A moment later, they arrived at the door to the room, and Gran asked him if it was the innermost part. Gran touched the door and told him that it didn't look like it would open. Gran also mentioned that the doors of the ruins are supposed to open when certain conditions are met, and suggested that maybe there is something in the room he was just in. He reaches for the door, replying that going back would be a hassle, but he knew that when he checked, there was no such feature. He then touched the door while telling Gran that there might be some other way. Suddenly, the door crystal lit up and announced that the magic wave energy was confirmed and it was looking up to the 100th king, matching with Laruslia Nord. It then asks him if he would like to release the lock. He was surprised that it recognized him as the demon lord and ordered it to open. It replied, "Roger," and the crystal began to turn around. The door then opened. He asked Gran if they should go ahead, and Gran stutteringly replied, "Yes." When they entered, he stopped in shock upon seeing a huge white room with a large capsule in the middle. He was certain that it was a long-term hibernation capsule for their demon clan and knew that even if they lost the war with the human race, it had been researched to preserve their future existence. He then walked closer to it, sweating and wondering if the research had succeeded and if someone was inside. With shaking legs, he approached it, hoping to meet his old comrades again. When he was a step closer, he begged that someone was inside the capsule, and when he peeked inside, he saw Iris sleeping peacefully. He remembered that he couldn't celebrate her last birthday. And even though he was prepared to die in that war, he was in tears, glad that after thousands of years, he would reunite with Iris again. Gran shouted, asking what was going on and why there was a person in that place. He noticed that Gran hadn't realized Iris was an ancient demon and knew that the characteristics of demons were unknown in the modern world. He told Gran that he didn't know the reason, but he thought she might still be alive, so they should open it and check. Gran scratched his head in confusion and asked him how they should open it. He remained silent for a moment and thought that if it was the same as before, he could try. He then reached for the capsule and touched it with his power. The voice then asked him if he would like to stop the hibernation device, to which he replied, "Stop it," and ordered the voice to prioritize the life of the person inside. The voice replied, "Roger," and began to unplug the wires around the capsule. When the glass slid open, they saw that she was breathing, making Gran exclaim that she seemed to be alive. He waited happily for her and remembered his comrade, Bacchus, proudly telling him that his daughter would be born in a month and how he couldn't wait for that day. He responded that as a father, he couldn't really imagine it. He also remembered Bacchus, with tears in his eyes, telling Iris that she had grown up so splendidly and always greeted him with a warm smile. The capsule glass then slowly opened, releasing Iris. She slowly opened her eyes, and when she was fully awake, she saw them and became angry. Gran noticed it and shouted to him that she was dangerous, but then she attacked Gran, causing him to slam into the wall hard. He asked Iris what she was doing, but then he was stunned when he realized that right now he was a human. She walked out of the capsule while he remembered that humans and demons had been killing each other. Iris then called him a human and pointed a strong power at him, telling him that humans should just die, leaving him stunned in horror. She then told him to die and attacked him with strong power. After that, she spoke to her uncle Laruslia, declaring that she would definitely avenge him. But she was shocked when she saw him gathering her power. He combined his power with hers and softly smiled at her, thinking she had gotten better at magic. He then remembered that when he was alive as a demon king, he used to make magic balls and juggle them, playing together with the children of his brethren. Once again, he created a swarm of magic balls and juggled them, which left Iris stunned. With tears, she called him her uncle. He called her and told her that her uncle had come to visit her. She was shocked to see her uncle and rushed to him, hugging him in tears and crying on his shoulder while he felt strange being the same height as her. He then peeked at Gran, wondering how he was, and saw him snoring, making him glad that Gran had only lost consciousness. He still remembered that the output of the magic bullet she used earlier was almost the same as the one used by a soldier when her magic wasn't that developed at the time. She looked at him with tears and a runny nose, making him turn around laughing. She then shouted that he was horrible and that she had been preparing to avenge him the whole time. But then she stopped and stared at him for a moment. She asked him why he spoke differently, what was with his body, if he was perhaps hiding after that battle with the heroes, what day it was, and what was happening. He told her that she was asking too many questions at once and that he would explain it to her slowly. She apologized and asked if the one who was thrown earlier was okay, to which he replied yes, and if it was Gran, he was still alive. She asked if she was right that Gran was an acquaintance of his and what she should do. He replied yes and told her that she had to apologize to Gran later. He then explained to her that he had just met Gran recently, but Gran was a kind person. He thought that if they said there was some unforeseen accident, it should be fine, making her amazed and telling him that he was so smart. He then turned around while telling her that it would be a shame if Gran woke up now and sat down, suggesting they should talk for a while before Gran wakes up because he wanted to ask many questions. She replied that she would gladly answer. When they are both seated, he asks her if it would be hard for her to believe that he is the Demon King from her perspective right now. She replies that it is not hard at all because her uncle is her uncle, and she does not doubt him in any way. He is surprised upon hearing this and asks her how she could be so sure. She replies that it was because he was juggling the magic bullets earlier, and the only one who could control that many magic bullets, especially among demonkind, was him. He asks her if she is sure, mentioning that her father Bacchus should be able to do it too, but she shakes her head and tells him that, as he knows, her father isn't very good at mana control, which he agrees with. She then tells him that her grandfather Mythos could also do it, but he didn't have any interest other than his research, and her elder sister Rome was a bit clumsy. He smiles upon hearing her stories and tears up, thinking that they are mundane memories, but they always make him realize that he cares about his brethren more than he thought. She apologizes to him and tells him that it must be a painful memory for him. But he replies that it is not and that he felt happy just listening to it and that at least now he feels relieved. She then looks at him with worry and reminds him that his body is definitely human and his age is young. She then asks him what is actually happening. He wonders how he should explain it and thinks that as far as he knows, Iris is not the type of demon that discriminates against humans, but her expression at that moment was different, making him guess that maybe she couldn't accept the reality. He grips his hand tightly and tells her that he is actually reincarnated. Iris was confused and asked him what he meant by reincarnated. She also asked if he meant that after his death, he was reincarnated into a human body after a long period of time. He replied that she was right and told her that the current him has a human father and mother who are both gentle and kind. She became quiet for a moment and told him that after hearing those words, she felt somewhat relieved because he was already satisfied with his daily life as a human. If that was the case, there was no more reason for her to see humanity as an enemy anymore. She also told him that she used to do everything to avenge him, and then things became quite violent, leaving him stunned like a stone in shock. She panicked and explained that it was not what she meant and that even if it was violent, she hadn't done anything horrible. She told him that, for example, she'd gathered some demons and then they went to annihilate the human army or left a note under the pillows of the soldiers saying that they could always kill them anytime, so they should prepare themselves. She then swore that they only did it to that degree, but he knew that it was already violent. He asked her if it meant that demonkind was not yet annihilated since they made such trouble, and told her that it wouldn't be strange if humans started a campaign to hunt down the demons. She responded that just as he said, there was such a campaign before and they would have definitely been eradicated. He asked in disbelief if the campaign didn't continue, knowing that humankind unified themselves thanks to their hatred towards the demons. He couldn't believe that they suddenly stopped midway. She explained that it was more like it couldn't continue because humankind divided into two factions, one under the banner of the church and the other under the banner of the hero who defeated him. He was stunned upon hearing it and couldn't believe that the knight really kept the promise she made. Iris asked him if it wasn't ironic that the people who killed the Demon King were now protecting his subjects. He then asked her what happened to humanity after that, but she replied that she didn't know and explained that during her guerrilla activities, she was captured by someone. By the time she regained consciousness, she was already in the deep sleep divide. He asked what kind of person could capture a demon without receiving any damage, and she replied that it seemed the person was using a magic device to block cognitive senses. She thought it was a woman because of the scent and silhouette. She then told him that she didn't know the reason why she did it. But looking back at it, she was really grateful because thanks to it, she could finally meet him again. He sadly calls her name, and she tightly grabs his clothes. She tells him that during the time he spent with her, she was really happy. Even though he was busy with his work, he always came to play with her and celebrate her birthday every year. So, when she heard the news of his death, she thought she would never be able to talk to him again. She thinks it feels like a dream and begs him not to force himself like that again. He apologizes to her while patting her head and tells her that he is a human now, so such a thing won't happen again. She tells him that she would be happy if things stayed like this and asks how she should stay by his side when he is a human and if the other demons know about it. He sadly tells her to listen to him carefully. The era where demonkind exists is already gone, and it's been more than a millennium, meaning everything has changed. She sadly asks if he is saying that demonkind is already annihilated. He responds that he thought some were still alive, but demonkind is already considered ancient and treated as legends. She tells him that she thought she had prepared herself, but she was fine now being separated from people close to her so suddenly, and she is already a bit used to that feeling. He looks at her with sadness, knowing that after his death, Iris was around 10 years old, and he guesses she must have seen the sight of her friends getting killed. He tightly grips his hands together, thinking that if only he could have protected Demonkind, it wouldn't have happened. He apologizes to her, which surprises her, but she tells him with a soft smile that it is all right. She then stands up, telling him that he had already given his best at that time, and if he had not been their king, she was sure that the demons wouldn't have survived that long. He was there, and her hope, which is why it is fine already, making him surprised upon hearing her words. He then smiles and says to Bacchus that his daughter has grown splendidly. She then tells him that even so, for demons to be considered legends means if she were to be seen, they might capture her, which she thinks would be troublesome. He replies that she shouldn't worry about it because Gran, the person she had blown away earlier, is currently adventuring with Yumi's, an ancient being. Yet, even Gran didn't realize he was facing a demon earlier, and he knew it was not a topic known to the general public. So, in order for them to leave together, he has somehow persuaded his mother. Gran then wakes up, feeling hurt in the back of his head. Gran sees them talking and hears her suggesting being his housemaid. Gran then remembers how she attacked him and panics. Gran shouts, getting their attention, and asks what the meaning of this is, which makes Iris stare at Gran. But then he shouts to Gran that it seemed like there was a misunderstanding, and Iris says she won't attack anymore, making Gran shocked and confused at the same time. Gran then walks closer to them, saying he doesn't get it, but he confirms that the bloodlust is gone. Gran then asks Iris why she attacked, and she panics and stutteringly replies that it was a classic case of mistaken identity. She then tells him that he might think it's too late to say, but she is truly, terribly sorry for what she did. Gran asks why she was vengeful at such an age and thinks that might be the reason she mastered such magical prowess. He then asks her if life is that tough, to which she nods sadly. Gran then agrees and, smiling, tells her that it couldn't be helped if that was the case, so they should consider it an accident. She smiles upon hearing this and thanks him, but Gran just tells her to drop the formalities because they don't suit him. Gran then asks him if they should head back to the village and what about the girl. He replies that it was what he wanted to discuss and tells Gran that Iris seems to have no one. Apparently, she was asleep there after being caught in an enemy's trap, so he was thinking that maybe she could live in the village. Gran replies that it makes sense because, in the city, Iris would probably end up in the slums. Gran then agrees and tells them that they should head to the village for now, making her excitedly reply, okay. A moment later, they come out of the ruin, and Gran asks if that place is an ancient demonic race's ruin. He just replies that he wonders too. He knows he can't prove it, but he is sure it is definitely related. Yet, he is glad for that ruin because he met Iris there. He knows the truth about the ancient demons, and being a demon lord are things he can't tell anyone, but now he can talk about them to the only kin of his kind. Iris notices him looking at her and smiles at him, making him feel warm inside his heart. Gran then tells them that it is touching, but Yumi's isn't there today, so they should do a thorough investigation another day. Since they discovered such an amazing ruin, it seems they are going to be busy from now on. He teasingly asks Gran if he is right that Gran is going to be quite famous and tells him that he is so envious of him. But Gran just asks what he is saying when he will be busy too, making him confused. Iris explains to him that he explored those ruins with Gran too, so he will also be recognized for his achievements. He tells them that he is just a 7-year-old kid and no one would believe it. But Gran just asks what he means by that and tells him that everyone would believe it since he is going to spread the word, making him shocked. Gran then tells him that his mouth is lighter than feathers and Yumi's will also probably blab about how he tampered with the barrier. Also, as he knows, their drinking habits are terrible. He panics and tells Gran to wait a minute. He thinks that it is not that he wants to live in hiding, he just doesn't want it to be out in the open that he is a demon lord. He doesn't mind being known for his abilities, but standing out too much and getting involved sounds like a pain in the ass. When Gran sees him silently thinking, he calls him and tells him that he was just joking about it. Gran then assures him that he'd spread the word if he wanted to claim his achievements, but he knows that he doesn't want that, so he should relax because he will keep quiet. He tells Gran that a first-rate adventurer's jokes are also first-rate. Gran reminds him that he was the one who brought it up first, making him realize that it was a comeback to his joke and that Gran has no intention of spreading it at all. This makes him guess that they seem trustworthy and that it might be okay to talk with them about demons. He then starts to walk, knowing that they'd probably come back there tomorrow or the day after, so he has time to think about it. But suddenly, the ruin behind them collapses, and when they look back, they are shocked to see it falling to pieces. Gran panics when he sees it, and he comforts Gran by telling him that he knows these things happen. Gran sadly responds that he has gotten used to it because that happens a lot when he is with Yumi's. They then walk closer to the destroyed ruin, while Gran tells them that in the end, the harvest is just the village's magic machine and the parts of those giants scattered around there. Iris asks him if it isn't better than nothing, to which Gran agrees but then stops talking suddenly, making Iris confused and asking why. Gran then replies that Yumi's is going to cry about it. A moment later, they are heading to the village, making him feel a bit nervous. He knows that both the chanting and efficiency of Yumi's magic are great, and he just simply rewrote her proud barrier, making him guess that Yumi's is probably inside the barrier. Gran tells Yumi's that they are back, but he is startled in fear when he sees Yumi's still standing inside the barrier, with ominous green aura and staring at them in anger. Well guys, that's the end of the video. If you like this video, comment part 2 in the comments section. Also subscribe to the channel, hit the bell and like the video. Thank you for watching and see you next time again.